concentrate of the anti-imperialist struggle in my country, but when I start, I need to mention how fascism works in my country and generally in the Eastern Europe. All of us in Eastern Europe, after the counter-revolutionary process, has a big problem with historical revisionism. It's not an accident. Why? Because all of these countries became negotiation with European Union. And European Union gave you demands that you need to, if you want to become European member of European Union, you need to have standards like members of European Union. And thanks to it, all countries during the negotiation process rehabilitated Nazi collaborationists during the Second World War. Also in my country, during the process of negotiation, European Union told us that we need to do it. And we faced in everyday moment with very primitive anti-communist propaganda. You can face with it in the school, in the TV movies, popular Syria, etc. But what is the point of it? The point is that they want to represent that people who fought for the freedom, for the socialism, they were adventurers and gangsters, and people who collaborated with the Nazis, they want to represent that it was a wisdom politics decision. And you could see that they didn't want to, they wanted to change the history. Why? Because they want to show that politics in Eastern Europe, who we can say occupied by NATO and destroyed by EU, is a wisdom politics, and in the future we need to be collaborator, not to fight for the socialism and for the freedom. Also, one very important initiative founded in Venezuela is Anti-fascist International, and also it's so very important initiative. And I'm a president of Anti-fascist, also Anti-fascist branch in Serbia. Dear comrades, in these turbulent times, the unity of the revolutionary part of the working class, its commitment to internationalist principles and the struggle against imperialism must send a strong message of determination to preserve peace, independence and resistance to wars and occupations. Therefore, today it is important to express our solidarity with the people of Venezuela, President Maduro and the government of this freedom-loving country which is under attack by the United States. We live in an era of aggressive imperialism policies that have provoked wars in Ukraine, Iran and Yemen, are committing genocide in Palestine and West Asia, and are threatening to extend the conflict to the Caribbean and exert pressure on the people of Venezuela. We must not forget the genocidal sanctions against the socialist Cuba, the constant threats to the people of Nicaragua, the US occupation of the Korean Peninsula, and the provocation toward the People's Republic of China, particularly through the puppet regimes in Taiwan. Today, the EU and the United States are displaying unprecedented hypocrisy. While describing the suffering of civilians in war zones, they ignore the facts that the use of civilians as human shields has become a practice carried out by their allies. In Ukraine, Nazi ideology is being installed and World War II fascists are being proclaimed national heroes. The Communist Party of Ukraine has been forced underground, while threats, intimidations and murders of politicians and journalists are commonplace. Monuments to Lenin and anything reminiscent of life in the USSR are being systematically destroyed. While Western politicians and media openly side with the neo-Nazis countries in Asia, Africa and the Middle East and Latin America, while experience of European and US neocolonialism see the events in Ukraine as a part of Russian struggle against the unipolar world led by the United States. NATO and the Western imperialism pose the great threats to the peace, and the US, EU, and NATO pursue aggressive politics against the Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and progressive movements in Latin America. Similarly, the US constantly provokes North Korea and China, while Western imperialism is responsible for the wars and the plunder of Africa. The hypocrisy of Western imperialism is also evident in its support for Israel's genocide against the Palestinians. Similarly, the West propagandizes about human rights violation in Iran, while remaining silent about human rights abuses in the Gulf monarchies, which are allies of the US. The degree of imperialism interest in human rights and democracy is perfectly demonstrated by the fact that with its support Al-Qaeda took over Syria, committing crimes against its own people. The peoples of the Balkans, especially in the former Yugoslavia, know imperialism well. Yugoslavia did not disappear on its own, but was violently dismembered by Western capital and monopoly interests, which are still active today. NATO is the armed wing of the Western imperialism, an aggressive military alliance that provokes wars and unrest around the world. NATO bombed Yugoslavia with banned weapons such as depleted uranium and cluster bombs, causing tens of thousands of deaths each year. I need to stop here because I'm not so old person, and a lot of people from my generation died from cancer, and in the oncological healthcare system or everywhere. Unfortunately, in my country, you can meet more young people than old people. And they want to explain us that it wasn't happened by aggression of NATO bombing. It happened because we love to eat bad food, love to drink, and something like this. And also they wanted to convince us that depleting uranium is very good for the agriculture. And you can see what does mean hypocrisy. However, all the peoples of the former Yugoslavia are victims of Western imperialism and the violent disintegration of the state. Political and economic dependence, pressure, and conditions are evident, and the region has become easy prey for the Western economic and military interests. The urgent duty of the peoples is to reject the policies of the divided and conquered, and to prevent the creation of weak and the servile puppet states, as example by the situation of the fake state of Kosovo. The imperialist seeks to establish governments obtained to their dictates, depending capitalist exploitation, and tying the countries to NATO and the EU. The southern part of Serbia, Kosovo, and Metohija is occupied by NATO. The pupist regime in Pristina constantly provokes Serbs and no-Albanian populations, while the US and the EU support it. The largest US military bases in the region, Bonstil, is located there, controlled by mafias and war crimes with NATO support. Negotiations between Pristina and the pro-imperialist government of Serbia serve to continue disintegration of Yugoslavia. Russia and China support Serbia's sovereignty in the United Nations, and Serbia depends on the Russian energy. The Serbian government does not want to sanction against Russia, but EU, the US, and NATO are putting pressure on Serbia, feeling conflicts and tensions in Kosovo and Metohija, and pushing Serbia to recognize Kosovo. Although the Serbian government pushes a pro-European policy contrary to the interest of the people, the so-called student protest nowadays in Serbia, which arose after the tragedy in Novi Sad, are led by liberals hiding behind the students. Their demands are neoliberal and contain no progressive goals. Our party, while understanding the justified anger of the people, cannot support protests that defend anti-popular politics and serve the interests of the US and the EU, openly opposing cooperation with China, Russia, Belarus, Cuba, Venezuela, and other progressive and socialist countries. The determination of workers' living standards, the strengthening of the imperialist organization, and the repression of anti-imperialist movements throughout Europe require an organized and coordinated struggle through anti-imperialist, anti-NATO, and workers' movements. In these historical circumstances, anti-imperialist forces must unite all progressive forces and fight against imperialism. We believe that socialism is a stage in development of human society, and that the 21st century will be a century of socialism. Forward with socialism, comrades. Long live anti-imperialist struggle.